Day 36.
Woo!
We are bringing it home.
Bring it home, baby.
That's it. That's it. So, in more ways than you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, So we're sort of, well, I'd love to say the end of this this exercise, but really, this is just the beginning. So we're sort of moving into the space where after this segment, it's really up to each person to experience and experiment with it to bring it to its, full fruition, which I can't even tell you where that is, to be honest with you. I mean, I could only explain my experience, but every person, every student has their own, which is, again, the most valuable. You can listen to everybody else's stuff, but basically your experience is the most important. Nothing trumps that. So let's go through it, and then we'll yak about it along the way. And if there's any questions, you'll reel me back in.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so we've done the becoming more porous, like a sponge, from the surface to the core of the body, physical body, and then we've been breathing in through every area of the body, having the air and concentrating on the visceral sensation of the air moving through us, moving in and out of us with the respiration in and out in a nice rhythmic pattern through different areas or through the whole body at once. So again, any combination, any pattern is, no pattern at all is fine. Just do it and get comfortable with that. At that stage, when you've done that for a few minutes, basically, you're going to intentionally now, in your mind and your imagination, imagine that your body is stretching and growing, right? So it's moving out in all directions and becoming thinner. The holes in the sponge, so to speak, are getting wider and wider. And so the gaps are getting bigger and the physical matter is getting thinner. So we want to just keep going. Of course, it's nice to imagine that you're sort of rising up, so you don't have this idea of being contained by the room that you're in. You're sort of lifting up because you're becoming lighter, right? So it's nice and easy to imagine that you're sort of rising up above the physical plane where you're on, and you're sort of in the air, and you keep expanding more and more. And again, the idea being that the physical matter gets thinner and thinner, and the gaps or the holes become larger and larger until you just keep your idea in your imagination is that as you're thinning out, you're covering more and more territory until a reference point, if there is a reference point for this, for me, it's sort of like if you have an aerial view of like what a square mile would be. It's sort of like you're thinned out over that type of territory. However big or however small, it doesn't really matter. It's not something that's so exact. Again, we don't want to make it too analytical because this is about the experience, the sensation, right? Not the analysis. The analysis is done ahead of time. I'm just walking through the steps. So again, we're thinning ourselves out until basically in our ideas, we want to get to a point where it's just sort of this gossamer web of physicality of you that's dispersed over a huge, huge distance and just sort of so light that it's floating in the air. And now, instead of just breathing, you're just feeling this wind or breezes just sort of moving through these huge net-like openings, right? So it's like, imagine a very thin hairnet or whatever you would want to think of, just gigantic spread out distance. And again, way more space than physical matter. In my mind, when I do it, I always think that the physical matter is so thin that it's only a cell wide, and it's just connected like these long strands of cells, so that the air is touching every single cell of my body. And so it may even feel as though there's a lot less cohesion or even understanding of where one piece of your body ends and another one begins. So the idea of form of arms and legs and head and torso is gone. You know, it's just this wide spread out net. And again, for me, on the intellectual side, again, not while I'm doing it, but beforehand, when I think about this idea, the idea, when I look at it from a scientific point of view, it's sort of my experience of this quantum idea of more space in my physical body than the physical matter again, right? So, and this is a way to experience that in my mind, that when I go out and I'm in that stretched out place, that there's far more air moving through me and touching every cell than the physical matter. No matter how far out it's spread, there's way more space than there is physical particles being held together. So again, that means that if the one is in everything and in the air, and again, if we look at some of the older traditions, you know, prana, energy, chi, however we want to call it again, that energy of the one is touching every single cell in my body. So it's sort of every cell is acclimating and being, you know, sort of washed in this energy, washed in this one, right? Washed in God, if you will. So, and being in contact with it. So, and just keep that idea in your mind and just really, again, stretch out your senses as far as how do you feel? You know, what's the tactile sensation of just sort of being weightless and floating and not being all coalesced into one tight little ball, but being stretched out over a vast expanse and having that air sort of move through, you know, these open spaces and touching every cell of your body. It's a very healing, very cleansing, and also it's a very unique experience. And it will grow in intensity over time the more that you do this. And you can have some profound experiences with this, just with this single practice.
Yeah.
And at the end of that, and also not just the air at this point, but the sunlight, the light flowing through this area, touching every cell. So cells that would normally, they're on the inside now are exposed, right? And they're getting direct contact with the sunlight. So a source of light, right? So, and the thing that stimulates growth and, you know, healing and all of these things that we talk about, that we understand for ourselves in whatever way that whatever tradition we've been brought up in. So it's not just the air, but also the warmth and the energy of the sunlight passing through every cell. It's an exquisite experience, and the more you do it, again, the more that it comes up. The reverse is exactly the same, just extended and exactly the same as what we did in the past, which is just everything starts to recoalesce and come back to more of the form that you have, and then settling down back into the room where you are. And again, the sponge becomes more of your physical body, but you're still going to experience a lightness that you didn't have before. It's been my experience with most students anyway, is that you have this lightness. The body feels different. You feel more fluid, more flexible, more mobile. You know, the joints move easier. You know, there's less, it feels like there's less resistance, almost as if there's less gravity around you. You know, you're lighter in step, and you know, your mind is still expanded, but there's more energy. And as I breathe in and breathe out, I have that idea continuously of the air, or the one that is in the air, the energy that's in the air is always sort of passing through my body and reconnecting with these cells, and just sort of moving in and out through me constantly, and gives me this lightness and this excess energy that I need, right? For something physical to move, something physical takes a decent amount of effort depending on what it is, right? But when I'm focused more on this energetic aspect, it helps my physical to be less involved. And, it's just a vehicle, a tool that I use to do that. But it's really the energy that's moving everything. So again, there's no real physical contact. See, I didn't slap you this time. So it's like it's just that, if we could look at it on a microscopic level, right, it never really touches that.
Right.
And again, from a scientific perspective, if you want a little bit more of that, you can always watch one of those older movies that sort of explains it a little bit more dramatically, which is like What the Bleep Do We Know, or whatever, where they show, bouncing the basketball or whatever. And it's like there's no real contact with the physical nature. The tactile sensation that we have is the tactile sensation that we get from one structure of energy touching or coming into contact energetically with another structure of energy. So the energy that's around my hand, or that is my hand, or we call a hand, is touching the energy that we call a basketball, but it's not really the ball. There's no physical contact there. So and that's it. So then you coalesce, and that's the experience. That's really the whole practice here. And so again, each time you do it, my experience is that you can, have that extended energy for a much longer period of time. There is a momentum to it. There is an accumulation, and you can carry that through your day, and then maybe you'll carry it through a few days. And so maybe one practice will carry you through several days. That's wonderful. I mean, it's not something you have to do every day to experience that. So, but obviously, the more you do it, the better it is. But again, don't feel like you have to press yourself into this, like, oh, I've got to do it every day. It's like, if you want to do it, but you'll see that as you do it, it's going to build up more and more, and it's going to carry you through in a much better way. It's going to make all of the things that you do, much more effective, because you have that connection. You feel that intimate connection with the one, on a cellular level, basically.
And the one expressed through these elements of nature, like the sunlight and the air.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the same practice could be done with that gossamer in, laying it down in the ocean.
Right. I mean, that was one of the things I was going to ask you. Is like, if you're doing this in your home or wherever you're doing it, do you have to, as you imagine that your body is expanding to encompass more and more territory around you, do you have to feel like you're expanding into the physical area that surrounds your house or the structure wherever you are? Or can it be like you said, like, we're here, but I can imagine that I'm doing it over the ocean, or even like into the ocean, if I have a connection with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Or, and I'm saying expanding in every direction, but basically, I mean, what would be the difference if I expanded the length of a river as opposed to out in a wide expanse? Could I extend like my head's at the headwaters or the lake that then moves into a river that goes to the ocean, it empties in the ocean, and my feet are there. So again, expanding myself in that direction, so I become the river. Now we're getting almost, we're getting into the territory of shamanism, basically, where we're blending and melding ourselves with different aspects of nature. And like I said in the last one, there are a lot of other ways to, sort of interpret and expand this technique into different areas. I went with the one that's sort of the most, not just general, but because of the lightness of it, it will have probably the strongest visceral sensation initially, but then it can be expanded into any of those things.
So you're using the elements of sunlight and air as a kind of a jumping off point with this technique, but then you could use it in any other way. I mean, even like submerse, if you wanted to, say, expanding yourself into the earth itself.
Exactly.
If you felt like you needed more stability or something like that.
Right. Or you wanted to gauge, again, from, again, we'll call it shamanism at this point, but again, other traditions have used this as well. How do I take a read on the land? So it's like I need to become part of that land, right? And the land, the physical earth, is just another aspect of the one, right? There's nothing that it isn't. And so when it's just a more dense sort of aspect of the one. So I can make myself into that gossamer and sink myself into the earth in, let's say, my property or whatever it is, or an area where I haven't been before, or a mountain. It's all of these things are possible. It's only your mind that keeps you limited or expanded, right? Well, how can I do that? So basically, yeah, I would stick with those elements of using the sunlight or light as sort of that fire element, more the wind or the breeze as air element, the ocean or a body of water as the water element, the earth obviously, or a stone or a mountain as a earth element.
Yeah.
So
but just as a side note, like I'd never even considered doing this practice like in those other ways that we're talking about now. But at the same time, I've never been bored with just doing it with the sunlight in the air.
Oh yeah, it's phenomenal. It feels great. It's phenomenal, and it has it really has some legs, right? So it extends. The more you do it, the longer the length of time that you carry that lightness with you. Which for a lot of people, if we talk to them and we ask them, or after a few sessions, I'll be like, how's it going? And they're like, I love the practices, but I'm so tired from my job and from family and from all these things. And it's like when we get to this stage, it's like this is how we accumulate more energy, more contact with the one is going to stay with you, so to speak, or you can. It's sort of like you're moving your mentality, you're moving your mind into a closer relationship, or an interweaving of that in a way that's physically expressed for you.
It's not as abstract as some of the other techniques of doing that.
Exactly. We want to feel it, because we're elemental creatures. We're here, right? So we're flesh and blood and all of these things. So it's like our experience should be culminated in that. If we're going to utilize it for things here, again, nobody's doing these exercises just, at least the way we've presented, they're not doing them just for the hell of it, right? They have a want, they have a desire, they want to move into a different situation in their lives in one way or another, a different relationship, different, financial situation or success, different health scenario, and an interconnectedness with something greater than themselves, or spirituality, if we want to call it that. So, but it all comes down to here. All of those things end up being here. So it's, you want to have sort of those visceral sensations of that actually being present. And this is a nice way to sort of bring something that seems so elusive and, at best sort of on an intellectual level, how do you bring it in and make it part of your life and see it expressed in a physical way here? That's we become catalysts for that. So it's like we just we're vehicles to express that. I mean, how many traditions say be the thing that you want? You need to become the thing that you're trying to attract. And this is a way to do that. In short, I mean, basically, if you want to create seemingly from nothing, if you want to produce a new event in your life, you need to become a creator. You need to become that which can mold the environment into what you want. There's not a lot of other things that can do that, or not as effortlessly, let's say. So the idea is that, yes, we do put effort into it, but why not sort of bring ourselves to that level? And when we mesh that together, we really feel that, we really become part of that, and we have that visceral sensation of being that and coming back and still expressing that in the world the way that we want. I mean, what's better than that? I mean, it'll just make the rest of what you're doing so much easier. So much less effort is expended that way. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. It's a great technique.
I'm like halfway there. I'm like, all right.
That's it. And then tomorrow, back to the grindstone. We go back to back to what do you want and why do you want it? What's your thing? And this is how we're going to, take all of this newfound energy and direct it into that, that which we want, to bring it to manifestation here.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
There you have it. Good. Without a slap.
You ready to party?
I'm ready to party. That's it. SpongeBob, the best. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Enjoy.